Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Samantha Cotterill.
And I'm Anthony Wheeler. All three of us are professional illustrators. For the last 25 years, we worked with all of the major publishers and publications in the business. I got stuck there. We're just going to leave it in. Published lots of books, taught lots of courses, and we're cool people.
Very cool. Each week, we tackle a subject related to illustration from three perspectives. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but every time you learn something brand spanking new. It's not going to happen.
You did it.
I did it.
I've not used my brain at all today, like at all. So this is going to be a really good episode for me.
Get that brain going. Get that brain fired up. No, it's been good. A lot's happened since we last met together. Mainly, I did a comics workshop that Samantha was a attendee of, an enrolled student in it.
Yeah. Well, that was an incredible course. Incredible. But say a little bit about it, and then.
Okay, so essentially, I talked about it in the last episode, but I'm not sure everybody listens to every episode. But essentially, what it was I did a comics workshop. It was a 2-day workshop spread out over a week, and the whole purpose of it was to kind of give people a head start in making their comics, because a lot of times when you're sitting down to make a comic, there's so many questions. Possibly you've read a book on how to make comics. You've read Scott McCloud's Making Comics or Understanding Comics, which is helpful. You've probably read a lot of comic books, but the actual act of making a comic, there's so many things to think about and things to do that are mystifying. And the purpose of this was to demystify it and to get a group of people like absolutely ready to rock and roll when they sit down to do their comic. And so day one of the workshop was 2 sessions. Morning session was my lecture, start to finish, how to make a comic. How do you get an idea, turn that idea into an outline, turn that outline into layouts, turn those layouts into a finished comic. And then the afternoon session was just Q&A. I just took whatever question people asked and answered it. And then I gave an assignment for everybody to work on over the week. And so we had a week apart from each other. And then the next Saturday, I had received comics that people had worked on, and I critiqued those for the morning session. So I think it was 8 different people I went through and showed them, like, here's how your comic was presented to me. Here's how I understand it. Here's where I got confused. And here's actual drawovers of the comic to show like how to fix it, how I would improve it. And then the afternoon was a short session on productivity, how to like little tips and tricks that I do to stay productive with, my crazy brain. And then a last Q&A to answer any last questions anybody had. And that was our workshop.
Yeah, it was so good. It was so good. I mean, obviously I was not one of the 8 students that presented homework assignment. I was gone for that, but for me, it was just an intake of so much information that was just, you're not giving yourself enough credit with all the work you put into it and creating these 5. It was just incredible. I mean, it was incredible. I can't even begin to say, the community was amazing. The questions were amazing. And yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming when it's something you want to try, but you're scared to do it. Mm-hmm. And you just we all like to Google, how did so-and-so work? How does so-and-so make their book? Yeah. We all naturally, I think, like to see a step-by-step, because it almost makes us feel a bit like we can do it. And then for going through your whole process, and you just clarified things, and just even seeing the way that you screenwrite, so to speak, mm-hmm. learning how to make the beats of a story. I think that's where it's scary of mm-hmm. how do you go work with the beats of something and with so many pages and panels, and how do you organize how many to do it's just daunting. Mm-hmm. And it was just so clearly presented. And then what I loved was that even after the live, having the recorded session to be able to replay it over and over
Oh,
and over.
yeah.
Because I like to replay it, stop it, then figure things out,
Mhm.
play it some more, stop, figure. Because especially when you introduce Clip Art Studio, just my
Mhm.
mind was blown with even just making the bordered. I mean, this is all new to me. And
Right.
so it made it less scary. And the
Uh-huh.
second session, I think, was brilliant in that the critiques you did, I think people just got so much value from watching you literally go over the drawings on how one could maybe improve the composition or the flow, even how to direct your eye to go from panel to panel with
Mhm.
text bubble overlays. And the beautiful thing about having you do it through several is you started to see a pattern
Mhm.
where there were certain issues that would kind of arise again and again, but in a way
Mhm.
that was really good because you yourself, with the next one that came, you started to recognize. And I think that's a huge thing of being able to see, oh, that part. And then just learning for myself, going from picture books, there are some crossovers in the approach on how you make picture books to comics, but then the nuances of looking at comics as a theater, the 180 rule of
Mhm.
just these little nuggets of gold that just had me going, oh. So it did. I've been in a mad dash of just doing a lot of writing, a lot of
Uh-huh.
sketching, a lot of it's just, I'm in that phase where it's just
Right.
things are brewing and bubbling. And I think what was the best for me was that it just awoke something that I haven't had in a long time, and just this excitement and going to bed and just excited to get up and figure some things out. So it was brilliant, brilliant,
Thank you. Wow.
brilliant.
What
I
a
praise.
paid endorsement.
It was
My
brilliant.
gosh.
I mean, I'm on, and then it almost was at the end. I know this sounds a bit intense, but near the end, I was almost like, oh my God, it's ending. And it was just a little emotional moment because you had the Discord community and it was just fun to pop in and like
Yeah.
see what people were saying. And it was just, you have to do it again. It
Okay.
was really good.
That was the Discord was some like the first session we launched, and at the end of it, people were like, "Well, can we have a Discord for all of us here?" And I didn't even think to offer that. And
Yeah.
Well,
so
the
the
thing that's
team,
funny
the
though is,
FPS team, set that up
yeah.
real quick and sent a link out, and it was
Well,
really cool
this
to
is
see all.
where
Yeah.
my son, I've never even done Discord. So I was Googling how to do Discord.
Man, there's a lot of power in Discord. I have a Discord for my stuff, and we have a lot of people who participate.
Yeah.
Outside of just having an extra community for people to get into, what do you think, Jake? And you've taught a lot of workshops.
Mhm.
Like, did you have any like other fun takeaways after teaching this workshop for the first time?
Yeah. Well, first off, there were like aha moments for me as I was distilling this information. I'd taught comics before, I'd made comics before, but there were a couple of things where I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. I need to pass that on to people. And one of them was I always break down comics into, the outline into pages. And I'm always thinking of panels. Like there's going to be 5 panels on this page, 6 panels, 3 panels, whatever it needs. But what I realized, if you chart the math out for that, if you're doing a 12-page comic and it's American style with 5 to 6 panels per page, you have to tell your story in 70 panels overall. Like I never really thought of it in the amount of panels it would take total. I always think in pages. But like when you say, can you tell a story in 70 panels, essentially 70 storyboards? I'm like, that is a lot more runway to work with than just trying to figure out how do I tell this story in 12 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was like an aha moment for me. The 12 the 12 comics making commandments was another one where I had, over the years, every time I would think of something that I never would want to forget, I'd just write it down on a sheet of paper, and that paper got longer and longer. And I revisited it in making this class, and I was like, this would be a good thing to just have, at the ready for these students. They could like put it up on their wall if they wanted to. But I narrowed it down from like 30 to 12 things, because some of them were part A and part B of one of the 12 that I put down, you know. So
Yeah.
if I'm talking about panels, there's like 3 other things of my rules for panels, but essentially this 12 was like the 12 commandments that you or tenets or like skills or things you need to think about as you're making a comic. And you can just go through that list every time you do a page and just check them off. Did I do this? Did I do that? Did I do this? Did I do that? And it should, I think, help you and sort of be like a shorthand reminder of the entire course of what you should be doing. So yeah, there's a few things that I learned. And then also the questions I was getting from people was also like a reminder of what people are really struggling with and wondering. And so
they were good questions too. There were a lot of really good questions.
Do you think most of the questions landed on sort of the tactical side of like, how do you do a border? How do you make a panel? How do you do a page layout? Or is it more of the strategic storytelling beats? Or more of the deep stuff beyond that?
Yeah. What would you say, Sam? Like,
I would say, I think the technical aspect was part of it, but it was more so the daunting, how do you know how to put, how do I say it? Like determining which page needs how much information in the flow. I think it's just confusing of how do I even start of pacing myself? How do I know how to fit this in an organized layout? I'm scared. I don't know where to begin. It just, I don't know if I'm saying it right.
No, that's right.
Great.
It was more on that side than it was, you know, what pen do I use or how do I use Clip Studio? There were a couple questions like,
Sure, a couple.
Can you show me?
It's important to be able to ask those things too. Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to know tools and materials because it's always this thing of, if I have their tools, then I'm going to be able to. I think we're always doing that. But I will say in the beginning, as you were going through it, I was on my phone on Amazon buying them as you were talking over your list of pens and tools, which, by the way, this one, I think, is my new favorite one now.
Oh, yeah. That's a good
the zebra. Yeah, that's the zebra.
I really love it.
Boy.
And the reason I love this, my biggest thing is for my arthritis, I have a really hard time finding a pen that doesn't hurt to use. And the brush pens with the really long tips are almost difficult because it takes more control to hold that pen.
Yeah, you have to grip it. Yeah.
You have to grip it harder. And so for this one, it gives me that feeling of the brush pen, but it's easier to use. So,
a lot more control. Yeah.
Yeah. So for all you arthritic creators out there, this is the pen. It was just even the little moment that we're just like, oh yeah, of course, the overlaying the text bubble to guide your eye to make sure it goes to this panel in particular, if there's a moment where you're not sure where the eye needs to go. And just that to me was a little nugget that after the course I took out some, and I was like, I see it happening here. Yeah. And then even a couple I thought, they didn't do that here. I can see.
You're right.
Confusing. And
you can start critiquing.
You do, but it's you've given a way to look at comics and kind of learning how it flows. And I think it was really good. And I was learning myself about what kind of processes I like, what type of, I'm not sure I'm a full graphic novel person of a lengthy, I think I need to start small. I'm not a strip 3-panel comic, but I think I'm somewhere in between. And so I'm kind of playing around with some ideas. And
I think with any of that stuff, especially when you're changing into sort of a new story type, starting small is the most important thing.
You have to start small. I think if you start big, you suddenly have these grandiose ideas of I'm going to do it, and then it's not gonna work. You have to start small and get some mini successes to kind of get yourself to be able to see I can do this one. When I finish this page, I'm going to be so excited. I did this page, and then I know that it'll give me the confidence to go a bit longer and go a bit longer. But I need to I need to walk the.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that was one of the things that I sort of opened with was, and talking about the assignment. The assignment was to do a 6 to 12 page comic story, and I said, we all have this idea of like the Lord of the Rings that we want to do. That's, going to take years to accomplish, or Akira or something like that, multiple volume book. And that's fine. Build out that world, figure out your characters and everything. But if you can tell a little vignette of a story about one of the characters in 6 to 12 pages, like that is the perfect place to test out this idea and to really run through the entire cycle of finishing a comic on in a short time span, right?
Yeah.
So
what's the
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Jake, what's the best 2-page comic that's ever been created?
Pancakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's Mike Mignola's Hellboy 2-pager entitled Pancakes, and it is probably the most revered short comic that's ever been made. It's just 2 pages. It's just 2 pages.
I'll have
perfect.
to look that up.
Yeah.
I think, and I do think it's also important that there's a tendency to just in your mind have this end goal and focusing on, I want to make a graphic novel. And maybe it's more shifting that mindset into, I want to be a comic artist, or I want to be versus just going, I want this New York Times bestselling graphic novel, but maybe to focus on getting those habits of learning how to just be what it takes to be a comic book artist, and what it takes to be doing the inking and the drawing and the finding your methods. And that's the goal. And then once those areas have become comfortable and known, then you can start thinking a bit more about these bigger goals, but start small and start focusing on the now and the habits that you need to accrue to get to that place where you can do that.
Well put. Yeah. Because you once you've made 1 or 2 short comics, every time you dial in your style a little bit better, your working methods a little bit better, your time management a little bit better, and then when you feel like confident and ready to do a 50-pager or a 100-pager or more, you can actually plot it out and say, well, based on what I've been able to do thus far, it takes me 10 hours to finish 1 page.
Yeah.
100-page graphic novel is going to take 1,000 hours. I have 20 hours a week that I can devote to it. So this graphic novel is going to take me 50 weeks, and be like, okay, I could finish this in maybe 2 years if I want to take vacations and have a life.
Yeah. One of my favorite professional projects was doing a year's worth of comics, mini web comics for this video game called Have a Nice Death. And one of the fun things about that project was how constrained it was. We had to really limit everything to 4 panels. And we treated it like an old school, daily comic strip that was in the newspaper. But then when everything was finally designed and put up online, it went from 2 panels top, 2 panels bottom, so 4 total panels. And just those constraints forced us to do so much creative stuff with it.
Yeah.
But also it didn't destroy us and destroy me in terms of time and how much effort I had to put into it. So the constraint was fun from a storytelling standpoint, but it also didn't destroy my schedule, which was crucial. And once you do a year's worth of those, 1 a week, everything sort of feels possible. So
yeah, no, I think that's a great way to do it. And it's a lot better to start with a known beginning and end, and then you have to work within that specific, and it would help make you organize and divide it into the sections it needs. Whereas if you just have this open-ended project, you'll never get it done, or you'll keep restarting it because you keep going and going and going. And then as you do, your work changes, and then it you need some structure.
Yeah.
And I think you got to learn from smaller sections, and then you can expand on it. And so I'm excited. It's nice to work this part of the brain that I haven't used. It's fun. But then there is a lot of carryover with picture books. And in a way, I'm seeing that a lot of the work that went into those has carried into this medium. So just being focused on flow and direction
Mhm.
and eye flow and even background secondary stories or reemerging little moments in the back that are just not in the story itself. But those are things that I've learned from picture books that I'm seeing that I'm already applying to this medium. And
Mhm.
I'm also learning, I'm very similar to the way I created, where I can't fully do what Jake does with writing out the full kind of screen. I don't know if you do that fully from beginning to end, but like writing out the screenplay and
Uh-huh.
then coming up with, I seem to do both in tandem where I'm doodling and
That's fine. Yeah.
writing at the same time. And that's kind of how I do picture books as well. So I'm
Mhm.
noticing that that's carrying over too. Um,
Yeah.
but it's just a
I've
good
done it.
launching pad.
I've done it both ways where I will do the loosest outline, like really just beats, and then I'll go straight to laying it out. And um, and sometimes, it'll just be based on like I have a very clear visualization for this idea that I want to do. And it doesn't make sense for me to write it out when I can draw so easily. And
Yeah.
so I'll go that route. And then other times where it's more story driven, I'll just write it out on a doc, Google
Yeah.
Doc or something.
Well, even just you saying the word beats, that was
Hmm.
just, oh, I never thought of
Hmm.
it like that. And then
Hmm.
going through I'm like, boom, boom, boom. I was like, oh, this is really mind blowing. It's so simple of a concept, but if you didn't think of it in the form of a musical pace, then all of a sudden it just completely changes and makes it easier to
Hmm.
figure out what moments to illustrate. It's almost like you're going through the theater set in a dun, 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 dun.
Right.
Um, to me, that was like,
Cool. Well,
So
I'm
I think a lot
glad.
of people are going to ask you, when's the next time you're going to run this course?
Next course, I am wondering if this is going to be one that I do in the fall again in the fall, or if it's not going to be until January. Who knows? So I just need to figure out my schedule and what I think will work. I
Cool.
am doing a course or a workshop in September with a comic artist named Sean Crystal. And we're doing like a 2-day similar type of workshop, but it's focused on how do you break into the industry? Like, what's the portfolio that you prepare to send to Marvel? And what's the pitch that you prepare to like send to Image Comics or to send to Scholastic or any of these publishers if you want to get your own work done? So it's a little bit more of an intermediate advanced workshop, but
yeah.
lots of good information in there.
Yeah.
And I'm
And
interested.
Sean's rad too.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go
I'm
ahead.
interested in the one you're going to do a longer course. Didn't you talk about that for next spring?
Graphic Novel Pro will be March 2025.
Yeah. And that one, because for now, this is kind of the time where, for myself personally, even with college kids home, it's still
Yeah.
a little like, the focus time is not as present as it
Right.
is during the academic year. So I know that one I'm going to be doing that one. So that'll
Cool.
be great.
Yeah, so that one will be 10 weeks long. Not
Yeah.
a 2-day thing, but a
That'll be
10-week
good.
thing.
It'll be a
Yeah.
nice structured class. That'll be good.
Yep. All right, I got a question for us to dig into. You guys ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, this one comes from a person who would like to remain nameless. And the subject line is, should I leave my stable but stagnant job to pursue my art dream? I've been in my current job for over 10 years, experiencing its highs and lows. I've worked on a variety of projects. It's easy work, remote, flexible schedule, decent pay, and benefits. However, recent years have seen increased outsourcing, reducing in-house hands-on art involvement. The shift has made the work stagnant and unfulfilling, with no growth opportunities in my art career due to the lack of upward structure within the company. The environment has also become disorganized and toxic, affecting my mental and physical health enough to necessitate a leave of absence. That sounds like
Sounds exciting,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
A thrilling
Sign me up.
opportunity.
Right. Now in my 40s, I built a bit of a financial safety net. While many artists struggle to find work and consider me lucky to have a job in this difficult time in the industry, I'm torn between staying in a toxic job for its ease, paycheck, and benefits, or quitting to pursue my dream of starting a business, designing and selling my own art on merch, and illustrating children's books, a dream since I've had as a kid. What advice do you have for those who are at the crossroads to remain in a stable but unfulfilling job, or to quit and pursue a lifelong art dream? I got some thoughts here, guys. I got some thoughts on this, but
I do
All
too.
right.
let's
All
hear.
right, you guys, let's hear. I want to hear you.
Okay, I'll say this first. And Anthony, you've been in this exact same position, so I know you have.
The actual exact same position. Yeah.
Yeah, like this could. Did you send in this email, Anthony?
Yeah. Like, let's just talk about me just a little bit more.
Right. No, I will say
All about
this.
Anthony.
I Googled this person. I checked out their portfolio. They are very, very good at what they do, very accomplished. And I looked up where they work, and I could see how working there would be a place that she describes. So, done a little homework on this person, kind of to get a better understanding of it. Here's what I would do. Yes, the financial safety net is great to have if you want to just jump ship and go headfirst into this. However, before cutting ties and burning bridges and doing all that stuff, I would really start devoting a good chunk of your of some of your free time to starting this business, to test it out, to see what people resonate with, to see if you can actually make money doing it before you jump headfirst in it. Because the worst thing is to get through the 6-month, year buffer that you have, 2-year buffer that you have, and still haven't a proof of concept, still haven't been able to go to market, or have gone to market and haven't gotten the response that you wanted. And now you have to go back and come crawling back to that job and saying, will you take me again? I need a paycheck. So the first step would be, what can you start doing with 8 hours extra you have a week, or 20 hours extra you have a week, and get that dialed in to where you're putting out a book, you're putting out what is the things,
like merch and products,
merch. Yeah, starting a business, designing and selling merch and illustrating books. So put together a line of merch, start a shop. That's absolutely something you can run while you're at work. And I have a feeling that if you're really enjoying that and doing that, it'll make work a little bit more bearable, because you can sit back in a meeting, a stupid, dumb meeting that you shouldn't be there even for, but you, for whatever reason, have to be there, and just be thinking about how you're going to fix that one thing in your Shopify store so that you can, add, have people add on an extra thing to their order with, one click or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that's the entire other side of this, going into business for yourself. Is not only is it just making the art, but it's also running a shop, answering customer emails. Like yesterday, I got an email that said, "Hey," because I just have been fulfilling my Kickstarter. For some reason, you sent 2 separate boxes, 2 books to me. I only ordered one. What do you want me to do with this extra book? So now I'm like Googling, how do you get a return package sent from a person? What do they have to do? That is not an insignificant part of my week, is dealing with little problems like that. And so that's where my head is at with this. Once you've seen that it's viable, and like people are, and really the thing that's holding you back from really getting successful on this viable thing that you've established is your time. And if you do quit your job, you can put all of that in there. Then it's time to quit your job and rock and roll. That's where I'm at with this. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah. So yes, I agree with all of that. My situation was a little bit different in terms of, I had the financial buffer. I had I still have a great spouse who was willing to take on some of the financial burden. I was in a mental spot where I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do the day job. I was making really great money, but I just couldn't be there. And I had created these like mental barriers that I had to go. So I think there's certain points in your life where you just say, I've got to cut ties. I need to be done before I put myself in a position where I'm not doing the quality job that I was hired for. So that's where I was. And I gave myself 2 years to try to figure it out. And it's funny because we say it. I honestly didn't know what that was. And for me, it was just to try to learn how to draw, how to get better at it. And so I didn't really have a great strategy sort of coming out. If I was in that position today, I would take a lot of the advice that you just gave. I would also prioritize and think about what are the easy, quick hit things that you can do, make, monetize, and sell to keep this thing going. So a picture book takes a really long time. Graphic novel takes a really long time. Characters and merch and pins and products takes time, but a lot less time than those other things. So prioritizing things that an audience can pick up as fast as possible is probably a good idea. The other thing is thinking about all of the different lines of revenue and all of the different places that you would be able to sell and market those. I think a lot of us are on as much social media as we can tolerate. Social media, it's really tough and it burns a lot of our time and interest. But the reality is that's where a lot of people buy stuff. So in addition to prioritizing in-person events, YouTube channels and things like that, it's just making sure that you have all of your social media really figured out, what you can tolerate, and then how do you put out stuff on a really regular basis so then people can feed into that story. I think there's a lot of power in people in this exact position who want to leave their job and kind of be a trailblazer. And I think telling that story in public is really important. It's really valuable. And people want to soak that stuff up. And I think you have to give people opportunities to glom onto it. So I would, if you got to go, you got to go. If you can tolerate it, do exactly what Jake is saying. If you can't, figure out what you can merchandise and how quickly you can merchandise. Figure out your lines of income as fast as possible. I wouldn't rely upon one line of income. I would try to have as many lines as humanly possible, even if it's just $5 here, $30 here, $2,000 here, just whatever you can cobble together. That's the tricky part. And then figure out what your tolerance is for the overall putting myself out on the internet sort of thing. And then just get after it. Just absolutely get after it.
Right.
I think my concern was reading the question, the bringing up the mental health and how it's affecting the physical health as well. That's, to me, that has to be the priority. I'm a little concerned with, I don't know the situation, but if it is really affecting your mental health and your physical health, then something has to change, because that's a really important thing that you have to take care of above all else. I do think if it's a situation that versus if it's something where it's so toxic for your mental health and your physical health, if it means you do have to leave this job just to protect yourself, and you're finding an opportunity somewhere else that maybe if it's not within the arts, but it's a stable job that's taking away this toxicity and then allows you to also have the free time to then start putting things out there, start feeding into that side, because you don't want to just jump into it if you're already in a mentally fragile state and then you're putting yourself into, you just completely quit and then you're putting all your eggs in one basket of trying to create this career from the ground up. That might not be very healthy to do if it doesn't go well, or if you run into some obstacles, which you will. So that's something where I think you have to really think about this job that you're in right now. I do think it also helps to see things as a right now, and maybe even just starting to create merchandise, like you were saying, and putting little things out there that psychologically is telling you something to look forward to. And maybe that's a seed that will help you have this, what I'm going through is a right now, what I'm looking forward to is where I want to be, and how can I get myself there? And that does so much power for your mental health. But for me, just the fact that those were included in the question, that's such a priority. I don't know.
That's a good angle. Yeah. Good
I think it's really important.
I've
had plenty of anxiety attacks in the 7 or 8 years that I've quit my day job.
And just it's no joke, and it really can manifest physically, and it's really not something you want to play around with. And if this job, even like I said, because it's in the arts, if it is that toxic and it's a danger to yourself, then it might mean finding something somewhere else that's just a good stable job for being a stable
bridge.
job that offers,
Yeah.
and then you have the time outside of that work to start working on what you need to do with this goal in mind of, I want to become an artist. How do I get there the safest way for myself that I can? That's how I would respond to that.
Which leads me to the question, because I often think about this: what am I qualified to do that isn't an art job? Like, where could I
Trader
get a
Joe's
job?
is an incredible
Yeah,
job. I mean,
that's-
Trader Joe's pays well. I'm not doing, sorry, this is not a plug, but I'm saying going and
Yeah.
there are wonderful jobs out there that may not, and you might feel overqualified or you might feel, but right now you just have to do what's the best for your mental health.
Yeah.
That's the number one
I was going to
priority.
say Costco
because-
too. Like,
Yeah.
Based on your list of what you would do with $1 billion and how quickly Will and I realized that you'd be out of $1 billion within 3 weeks, I wouldn't be an investor if I was you. I would think differently about that. Maybe go work in a
one of those
museum.
ideas
okay?
is
But
profitable,
even
huh?
so, let's look at it that way. Like, let's say your goal is to be an artist where your full-time dream is to do exactly what she was saying. And maybe having a job that is completely different, where you're getting material from your just the interactions of people and the daily, there's a lot to be taking in and absorbing and observing of life around you that it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to, just put your health first, health first, and then
I think
the
it's
other
important.
things will follow. The other things will follow.
I think I think in addition to all of this, I think you have to meditate on the idea, just if anybody is in this position, are you an entrepreneur or do you really need the structure of a setting that's already been established and leadership above you and support staff below you? And none of these are good, bad, ugly, or anything like that. But there's a considerable amount of whiplash when you leave an established corporate setting to then do your own thing. For me, it took easily 8 months after I left my day job and not having the structure of reporting in every day and putting out these ridiculous emails and status updates to then truly understand like this, oh man, this is my thing. I can do this. And it was really overwhelming to then be the guy or be the person.
Yeah.
And so, and I think you can grow into an entrepreneurial mindset, but I think people underestimate just how much structure there isn't anymore once you are that. And that can be really hard.
When I left animation and started working for myself, it took me, just like you're saying, like a couple of years to figure out like how to, and now I have a ton of structure, but just how to go from, what did I even work on today? I have nothing to show for it, even though I was at my desk all day and I knew I got stuff done, but I still didn't know what I did, to then just make a post day checklist. Like, oh yeah, I wrote that. I did this, I did that. And then to start the day with a checklist, like get this done, get this done.
Yeah.
And then for that to grow into my whole planner and, structuring my year and my quarter and my week and my day, all that stuff. So that's a really good point too. Like, the more structure you can like give yourself, I think the better you're going to feel mentally and the more productive you're going to be also. I have a tactical advice too. And it goes off of what Anthony was saying. Like a graphic novel takes a long time, a children's book takes a long time. And absolutely you should be, if that's something you want to do, chipping away at it a little bit at a time. I almost look at it like you have a garden and there's some things that take a very long time to grow and to eventually give fruit. So for me, when my wife's doing that in the backyard, it's mostly her. I get to water it. But she's like,
and eat it. Yeah.
Right. And eat it. But like she has a lemon tree, and that lemon tree took a couple of years to get online to where it was giving us consistent lemons. Right. But tomatoes, you can have tomatoes in a few weeks if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so and so like I would say work on the long-term things in the background while you're still working on the short-term things. And then the merchandise specifically, and this is my tactical advice, don't get too niche, obscure with that initial run of merchandise. And I have an example. I have these 4 characters that I've been working on and doing comics with and stuff. Missile Mouse, Skull Chaser, Star Princess Avon, and Catbot. And I made pins of them, really cool little like chibi style pins. And I thought I'm going to sell a ton of these based on what I sold on my Skull Chaser pin. I'll just order that same amount and do it. But what it turns out was people didn't have a deep connection to these characters enough to buy all the pins that I bought. And so now if you just come over to my house and ask me for a pin, I'll just give you one. I'll give you 2 or 3, maybe.
Why did I buy them all then? God.
Because you're a fan. And you got them first, Anthony.
I did.
You got them way before everybody. My advice is pick something that there's already a fan base for. And I don't mean like Star Wars or Harry Potter. I mean like dragons or dogs or cats, like a general category that there's already a strong fan base for. Like people love frogs. There's
my son loves frogs.
Yeah, people love frogs. I have a daughter who is like, it's easy to get her a gift because she loves frogs. And you just go online and frog stickers, or frog patch or a frog t-shirt or whatever. And she's just like, great. So using that example, one Kickstarter genre that I see a lot is the pin Kickstarter. And what people do is they'll do a set of 5 pins or 10 pins of fantasy characters or zodiac signs, or in this case, frogs. So you could do, here's frogs playing leapfrog. Here's a frog eating a big cheeseburger. Here's a frog, do 4 pins or 5 pins of a day in the life of the frog. And those people can order 1 pin or they can order all 5 pins. And you've already got this built-in fan base, and everybody who loves frogs is going to be like, oh, did you see this Kickstarter about frogs? And now you've got like a thing that actually might have legs, instead of just being like, oh, I'm going to do my own characters and everybody's going to love my own characters. And I'm just going to, nobody knows who your characters are. You haven't built the fan base for them yet. Yeah. That's for way down the line after you've got a best-selling graphic novel with them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yep. Great advice. Yeah, for sure.
I'm always wanting to do the merch before the hard work of like the graphic novel story. Like,
of course.
I'm always thinking, oh, action figure. No, you
just don't do keychains. Like
okay.
Don't do keychains because I didn't think that through. So I did a little keychain. I don't know if I sent it to you, but I thought it was incredible. It's like the little book.
Yeah.
Keychain. I did not think this through. And this is where another important lesson is to really think things through, because this little keychain suddenly takes it from popping in an envelope to being considered a package.
Oh, right.
And when I did my giveaways for the book, I was giving away these keychains. Lesson number 2 is I had the entries open worldwide. So this little keychain cost $40 to send to France, and 80% of the entries of my giveaway were all overseas. Oh. And I went into the postal service to send him, and he saw my bag, and he's just like, oh, I don't know what you just did to yourself there. And I was just, don't show me the receipt. Please don't show me the receipt, because I could not fulfill this and send it. I am giving away keychains to every person I see because I have this massive amount of keychains now, and I'm at a book signing and I'll be like, you want a keychain? No, I don't need a keychain. No, you want
You just drop it in their purse, just slide it right in.
Right.
Take this keychain. This was the most expensive. And it was one of those, oh my gosh, this is so cute. I love this idea and giving away these little keychains. So merchandise is aesthetically beautiful and it's tactile. Also, just think through about the costs of.
Yeah.
We should do like a merchandise pro course.
Yeah.
Where people can learn all about the merchandise, where it's made, what the margins are, how to ship it worldwide.
Yeah.
not a
So
bad
there's some
idea.
people with very expensive keychains out there, or they're in their drawer. And I was like, that's a $40 keychain you just put in your
Well,
drawer.
maybe what you
So,
do is you bury them in a landfill, and now they're a collector's item because there's only the ones that you shipped out
yeah.
overseas.
Yeah.
Man, I just had so much anxiety just now from that story because I've been bitten by the shipping, not realizing how much things cost to ship and having a ton of.
Oh, well, I walked into the store all excited and thinking, this is so amazing. I gave away all these keys and I did a little drawing with it. And I walked out from 30 envelopes, $800 later. I cried all the way home. It was not my brightest move. And when I went back, he even said, I hope there's no more keychains, and I hope not to see any more keychains in the future, and that you've learned from this. I was like, oh, okay.
When the guy at the post office is giving you business advice, you know you've really screwed up.
It's amazing.
Well, we got a few minutes left, and I wanted Sam sent us a topic idea that this actually was something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that's competition versus comparison. And I like the way that you worded that. I gave a speech a couple weeks ago at the so Arizona State University has an Institute of Religion on their campus, and during the summer they did these Wednesday night where they bring in a professional. This particular summer it was creative professionals, and have them talk about their career, talk about creativity, things like that. So I'm local here. It was easy to get down there and do it. And I got to put together this nice presentation about creativity and my tenets of creativity and what makes me inspired and whatnot. And then I opened it up for questions. And one of the questions was, how do you not be jealous of other artists who are better than you? And it goes back to this competition versus comparison type of thing. And my answer was, I absolutely do get jealous. And there's times where I'll be a little bit vulnerable here. There's times where I see other people's success in particular areas where I want that success. And I get so frustrated with myself that I'm not there, that I'm not doing what they're doing, or I'm not getting the recognition that they're getting. And that's when it becomes unhealthy for me, because it makes me feel bad about myself. When I see a person who's succeeding and I think to myself, where I'm very happy for them, and I think to myself, oh, this makes me want to work on my project even more and do a better job on it, and it gets me excited about the work, that's when I know it's healthy, and I can keep the influence of that person in my life. But if someone is making me like sad and, making me feel like I'm unworthy or I'm not ever going to be good, that's when I need to like remove the influence of that person from my life. And it usually means unfollowing them or avoiding their posts or whatnot. And the example I gave is there's an artist who's 10 years my younger. It's someone that, I have a relationship with, and I do have a healthy relationship with their work now, but there was a little span of time there where I was just like, oh my gosh, they're 10 years younger than me and like 20 years ahead of me. Right. And I'm like, what am I even doing here? Like, why am I even working as an artist if I can't even do what they're doing? And their life is so much better than mine. And, they're able to work on things and do things that I'm not able to do. What's the deal with it? And I had to like take a step back and then fix myself a little bit, like work on myself a little bit. And then now that relationship is fine. And I'm so happy for all their success. And I realized that there are art gods who walk among us, and just deal with it and enjoy them while they're here,
Yeah. There's always going to be those art gods that are there. They're always going to be there. And a lot of times they're a lot younger. And so,
Right. Like,
yeah,
imagine if you're a contemporary to Mike Mignola, like, and you worked with him on a comic and inked over his pencils, and now all of a sudden he has this entire like Mignola empire of movies
Yeah.
being made, toys, 1,000 graphic novels. At some point you just have to sit back and be like, let's just watch this guy be a master of the universe and
And I
create.
bet he's probably experiencing those same feelings himself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know
absolutely.
that
That's a
he
good
is
point.
probably feeling that, you just don't see that. And I'm sure that he's having those moments as well. I think that's also important to remember, that
That's a good point.
the people you're jealous of are probably feeling the same way often. And I think for me, that was a big reason of leaving that social media, because for some reason it was when you combine the images with the comments, that is always where I notice those feelings happen. If I'm going to a gallery or I'm going to a museum, or even if I'm on Pinterest, I can do that and I can be inspired and I can get ideas and it goes, oh, that's great. But for some reason, for me, it's when you combine the imagery with the comments, that I think is what takes it from this competition place of wanting healthy competition, of trying to get better, to this comparison place of, I'm not any good. What am I doing? They're just so much better. Look at that. They've got it made, and all their posts. To me, it was just too damaging, and I had to step back from it. It's hard in the sense that sometimes you do feel a bit isolated from everybody. You feel like you're missing out on everybody's doing their things. But then I have to remind myself, sometimes I felt even lonelier when I was in all the mix of the social media and the posting. I think I felt more unsure of myself, down about myself, and lonelier than I do now. So I just think for myself, I knew that I had to have some distance there. And even sometimes in the beginning, you can do it and you're okay and you're inspired by the work. But the minute that the inspiration turns to you feeling yourself less than, that's the cue of you need to step back and just step away for a little bit and find other ways to be inspired until you're ready to, because it's not their fault that they're doing. I mean, a lot of times they're grinding, doing really well, and like they deserve that success for themselves. But it is hard when you start going, but I feel like I should be there, and why am I not there? And if I'm not there, I'm not that good. And then you can just go down this spiral that's not helping you at all. It's just inhibiting you from being able to just be creative for being creative's sake and finding out your own source of inspiration and style.
Yeah. Anthony, what do you think?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think coming into this way later in life from a different career, it has given me just a completely different perspective. I do think, though, I had some success on social media very quickly, and I think that took away a lot of the sort of the comparison fears, because my stuff just sort of worked. However, in the last couple of years, things have just way slowed down. The audience that I have has found me. It has not grown leaps and bounds. Sometimes it shrinks. And so, so like mentally, I've just kind of shifted a little bit. I have this, I do this daily live stream. And what's really important to me on that live stream is that I would demystify as much as I can about art and illustration. And then, it's really important for me to sort of like help people figure out. Now I sound like I'm awesome patting myself on the back, but like
you are.
I am. No, yeah. Self-congratulations a lot on this one today. But I want people to like get back to their childhood, like get back to being 12 years old and like the wonder and the joy of art and illustration and cartooning and silliness and all of that stuff. And so I'm just able to look at things in a much different lens than I maybe used to be. And I'm just really excited for other people's successes, which just feels really good. And then I think I figured out a long time ago for me personally is that the shared successes, like when other people are lifted up, my stuff tends to go along with it. And it's not always symbiotic, like a one-to-one or anything like that, but just the drive to lift others up has then made me feel really good. And then I don't worry so much about the rest of the comparison and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are times, though, I do think it's really important, and then the live stream gets after me a little bit about this, where I will be drawing something. There'll be a group of people sort of surrounding me, and I'll say, "Man, I can't figure this one out, or I can't do this one, or I don't think I'm good enough to do this." And I think I think people are really nervous to hear language like that, and I think sometimes it's okay to say, "I don't have the skill for this yet." And I'm comparing myself to where this other person is at, and I'm ascending to that. That's where I want to be, but I don't have the skill for that yet. And I think sometimes people get nervous about, you down talking some of that sometimes. But I think it's important that people do understand we can compare as long as it's healthy, as long as we understand that we're moving in a direction to get better, and that we can identify what some of our weaknesses are. I think that's important. I really do. But that's a tough conversation for people to have, because there's this whole positivity movement. People don't want other people to talk bad about themselves, and it's hard to differentiate. I'm not talking bad about myself, but I am recognizing a weakness, and I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think it's also that from the prior episode, it's a lot of the fixed and the growth mindset competing with each other.
Yeah.
And I definitely was born more with the fixed one. And so I think that's where those two kind of butt heads sometimes. And I have to allow the one to take over and make sure the other one's having the spotlight.
Yeah. I this last, weekend was San Diego Comic-Con. I used to go there every so often, but what comes with San Diego Comic-Con is also photos of all the Eisner Awards that comic artists have been winning. And I always look at those and I think I want to be appreciated in the same way that those people are being appreciated. And, and to say that I'm jealous of them getting an award is kind of a simple way to put it. What I think is wanting one of those awards is a symptom of me not creating what I want to create. And I think if I was making more of the things that I want to create, then whether or not I got an award for it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
So really what that comes down to is I see somebody getting that award, and I see that award is obviously because they put time, love, passion into a project and are being commemorated for it. And I look at all the things that I'm spreading my time between, and none of it's, maybe I don't feel like any of it's award worthy, but it's stuff that has to get done. And what I'm really aching for and wanting to do is to have one of these things that I'm doing to really be a passion project. But then I take a step back and realize if you're spending so much time on these particular things and you have the choice, Jake, to do whatever you want, then you are following your passionate. The only way you can get show up for 200 episodes of podcast is because you're passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
The only way that you can, continue to make these courses for SVSLearn is because there's some level of passion there. And I step back and I think about this comics workshop, and part of me realizes maybe your gift to the world isn't necessarily an award-winning graphic novel. Maybe it is teaching someone how to make an award-winning graphic novel. So
we've talked about this before. I think you've underestimated at times just how many people you've helped influence to be able to do what we all do, and without sort of and it's hard too, because it's how do you measure that level of success? But because of things like our friendship and the relationship and the podcast and yada yada yada, I quit my job and support my family completely solely on art and illustration. And it's because people like you pave that path and show that it's a thing that people can do. And now 8 years later, I have all what I have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that it's funny too, what one person would deem a success might be the award or the novel or the book deal or the paycheck. But then ultimately, it could be equated in so many different terms.
Right.
And that's a weird thing to think about sometimes, you know?
Yeah. And it's hard. It's like a definite intentional mind shift from trying to think of, okay, yeah, you want that award, but what is that award really reflective of? It's reflective of a panel of how many people that have decided that this book is, or is it the millions or whatever copies that are just adored by this huge fan base? Look at the Sandra Boynton books. I mean, she's not, and she has even said herself, like, I'm not someone that is always up for awards and categories, but I consider her as beyond successful. And
I've read her books more times than I've read many other books.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just trying to remind myself of what really am I wanting, and what validation am I really wanting, and what's really worthwhile, and is the validation more all the people I'm reaching that are saying the story really connected with me in a way that no one else, or I saw myself in the story, or even just with Jake, I think you need give yourself some credit here. Your graphic novels are unbelievable. And it started my son's first graphic novel was Missile Mouse. And that started our weekly visits getting more graphic novels. I mean, it was all, Missile Mouse started it all. And it is one of our most treasured books and it's a marker of my kids' childhood, is one of the books I think of when I think of them growing up. And even with your graphic novel course, you could just hear that with the comments from people, how much they were just absorbing and appreciating and just blown away by what you had given them as tools and encouragement and inspiration. So it's just finding that place where you feel appreciated. It doesn't have to be because there's an award written on the book, but
I think it's always...
I'm just not sure how this episode turned into a therapy session for Jake, but I appreciate it.
I think outside of you, I think however anybody feels is super valid. So if you feel like you want to compare yourself, that's a valid feeling. If you feel like you're happy for other people's successes, that's super valid. And you're allowed as a human to go back and forth.
We're human beings. We're human beings. We're going to, and like you said, I think it's okay to recognize that and go, this is happening right now. And all right, how do I deal with this? How do I tell myself and talk myself through it? Because it's going to happen. You can't just say, I don't want to be that way and I don't want to let it get to me. It will get to you, but it's how do you respond to that moment when it arises? You have a choice with how you respond to it and work through it. And each time you do, it might get easier to recognize when it's happening the next time. And I think that's the bigger takeaway from that. Is recognizing when that happens and knowing how to respond to that situation.
I think we have the editor take out all the nice things that we've said and and then just leave it like this.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Well, I'm glad we got to unpack that particular topic, because I have been thinking about it a lot lately. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take us out. Thanks for joining me today, Sam and Anthony. You guys are great. 3-Point Perspectives made possible by SVSLearn. Where becoming a great illustrator starts. You can go check it out at svslearn.com. Check out Anthony Wheeler's work at anthonywheelerart.com. Is that what it is?
That's exactly it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and samanthacotterill.com, I believe, right? Okay. And those are your hosts for us today. The podcast is produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel T.U. Special thanks to our team manager, Preston Smith, keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, Shownotes wrangler, Lily Howell, chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.
Again.
I'm not pointing at the camera. It's not going to do it.
It's okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.